House to Home, presented by Remax Diamond Realty.
All right, everybody, welcome to House Home 10 Hut. Prepare for inspection. All right, and that is literally what we're talking about today. Hopefully not as militant, although, you know, we support our friends in the military and we thank them for their service. Liz and Gina are here from Remax Diamond Realty, Guam, and we are now talking about the phase in getting your property ready to be purchased, to be the home of somebody's dreams. But inspection is, of course, a key element because, Liz, we have to make sure everything is as promised and in tip-top shape.
That's right. In fact, when people call us, there are two things. Either you're putting it on the market for rent or you're putting it on the market for sale. So if you're putting it on the market for sale, what we want to do is inspect the property to see what upgrades were done to the property, what type of tenant could you attract to your property in terms of rental. Because, of course, there are different budgets for different areas in the rental market, because we've got the corporate, we've got our local market, we've got the Section 8, we've got military tenants. So there's different tenants that you can attract based on the type of property you have, a 1-bedroom, a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, and the upgrades and the size, square footage is critical as well. Mm-hmm. And whether you have air conditioning, is it concrete? Do you have typhoon shutters? So there's a number of areas that we will look for when we come to do an inspection for a rental. Now, on the for sale market, when we come in, there are critical factors that we look at. Does the home meet the boundary points? Because you need 8 feet from the sides, you need 15 feet from the front, and 10 feet from the back. So we always look at, is it in conformance with government standards? So that will be one part of the inspection. The other part is, of course, the interior, the curb appeal, the location, the interior of the property, how many bedrooms. And again, because these are factors that will come into play when we go into our market analysis. So, you know, and Gina and I also give advice. If you want to attract this market, whether it be for rent or whether it be for sale, to improve the marketability of the property, sometimes we will go into, you'll need to paint, you'll need to declutter, you'll need to box things up. So there are different aspects on our inspection part of it, you know, to help either a landlord or to help a seller.
Right. And Gina, of course, like the word inspection to me conveys that, you know, that the property that's in question, you know, conforms to some sort of standards. And so who comes up with the standards like locally? Is that under the Guam Association of Realtors, or is there a higher level? And then, of course, because, you know, the military is such a big part of the real estate market here, do they have their own tier on top of that?
Well, when we talk about standards, we're talking about market standards. Of course, when Liz is talking about how the distance from your house is to your boundary line, she's talking about she's talking about government code, the law. As a professional, so the Guam Association of Realtors, they don't guide us as far as that's concerned. That's really our brokerage. It's our brokerage's responsibility to make sure that we know what we're doing when we go out. Of course, we're not experts, we're not surveyors, but we generally have to know the law and how it applies when we're going to sell property. So that's why Liz is mentioning the setbacks, because as a professional, you go out there and our job is to give guidance to the seller and say, okay, this is what we see. I suspect there might be something wrong here or there. And then the other standards is, hey, depending on the price range that you want, I see your home is, you know, we ask them, what size is your home? If they don't have that information, then we're going to go out and get it for them, whether we get it through our sources, through the Government of Guam agency, or we get it through hiring somebody. I usually will hire somebody to go measure out the house. I like to use appraisers because they're much better. I mean, they're 100% better at it than I am. So I always want to go to the professionals to do stuff like that. But once we determine the size of the home and the land area and the location, then we can give the seller some idea of who your market target's going to be. And depending on who that market target is, will determine, you know, I mean, your home is going to determine your price range, which is going to determine your target market, which probably can determine what you're willing to do. Because we will tell you, are you willing to, if the house needs painting, are you willing to paint? Can you possibly declutter? Just remember, when we sell your home, you're going to move out. You can't sell and live there unless you make prior arrangements. So be prepared to move out. Well, in anticipation of moving out, can you declutter now? And I'll give you, for instance, I've viewed a couple of homes where I went through the house and it was in excellent condition. And then I'm looking around, hey, what's that line here? What's this line there? And that line here? Have you filed an insurance claim? Have you called your insurance adjuster?
Oh,
No.
when the ceiling cracks and then it spider webs out. Oh gosh.
The ceiling or
Yeah.
maybe the walls or whatever.
That could imply water damage.
Yeah. And we're not professional structural engineers, but as trained real estate professionals, we are supposed to know what to look out for. And then, just let your seller know these are things that are going to be of concern. What are you willing to do? And depending on the seller's budget, you make a determination of what can be done, what's going to be deferred, and just disclose to the buyer, hey, can't do this. So if you buy it, this is what you're taking on. And that's how we, that's what we do during the inspection process.
Okay, and now Liz, I want to pose this next question to you, because one thing that I know from working with you guys over all these years, 9 years strong, this show is that the inspection process, I mean, this isn't like violating, one of the rules that Moses brought down on the tablets from Mount Sinai, right? It's like, it's a general assessment and you make a note of things that aren't up to code. Is the buyer at that point, can they negotiate further? And then they can say, okay, Gina told me they found like a little crack in the ceiling. I'm willing to fix that with my own, I know somebody, or I'm willing to take that on. Can you knock $15,000 off the sticker price?
Well, any buyer can request for certain things, but most of our buyers, and I recommended that when you're buying property, hire an inspector, because Gina and I are professionals in marketing and inspecting and looking at the property based on our point of view and our experience. But as Gina points out, we're not the expert. Now, there are inspectors out there that if you were buying a home and you're paying X amount, you could hire an inspector to go in. And the inspector, what they do, they're professionals and they're certified. They will look at the electrical, they will look at the plumbing. There's certain things that they look for. They look at the structure. Now, bear in mind, they may not be structural engineers. So if there is a crack, we recommend, and if it looks like it's not just a plaster crack and it may look like a structural, then I would recommend hire a structural engineer just to look at the property and see what needs to be done. Now, bear in mind, when you do an inspection, the results of the inspection could be a negotiating factor, or depending on how their purchase agreement states that they want, the purchase agreement may state that any governmental issue is to be corrected by the seller. So these are things, again, that could be negotiated. So they may look at it and say, hey, the inspector noted cracks, they noted A, B, C, D. These are items of issues. However, we're willing to take that. We're willing to pay for it ourselves and do the repairs and then negotiate that. So again, that's another matter, but it could be done. But Gina and I always recommend get an inspector so that you know what you're dealing with. So when you're ready to purchase the property, you're happy with it and there are no issues from the get-go. Once you move in, you know you're moving into a home that's been inspected.
And the point being, it's not the end of the world if the inspection has like A, B, C, D as far as like dings and everything. Those can all be fixed. You're just making note of it.
But yeah, one thing is in the inspection, there are red dots that reflect, let's say, safety hazards. So the inspector may say 6 items are safety hazards. The remaining inspection is just either aesthetics or just basic stuff. But I think many of the people we deal with are mostly concerned with the safety hazard in the inspection report. And then some of them would require, seller, please take care 5 items that were on that safety hazard.
That's a very good point. Gina, I'd like your thoughts on this because I mean, it's one thing to say, okay, there's a flower bed in the beginning and it's got like white picket fence, and I prefer, cyclone fencing because like I'm old school, right? It's a completely different thing to say you've got an exposed wire that may be crackling and popping during the that's a live wire, during the inspection phase.
but
What categories are there? So I mean, we know aesthetic, cosmetic, functional, structural, infrastructural, and safety.
But we'll see when we're doing listings, Jason, we're not going in depth into this inspection. The point of our inspection is really to determine what we can see as professionals. So it's something we could see with our eye. This is, hey, this doesn't look good. There's a crack in the wall. That's obviously going to be an issue. We're doing it for the purpose of presenting to the owner what you need to do to both rent it and sell it. That's why we're there.
Does it pass
Once
the eyeball test?
Yeah, and not
okay,
just
fine.
eyeball test. I mean, we are professionals. We know
Yeah.
what to look for. In terms of, is it sellable? Does it meet the guidelines of the law? That's what we're looking for. And to some degree, for the most part, we can determine, like, I looked at a house a couple weeks ago and I could tell, hey, this is too close to the road. I don't think you meet setback. And sure enough, they didn't. And so those kind of things are obvious to us because we're trained professionals. We know what to look for. But in-depth details on inspection, electrical, plumbing, structural, that is what the buyer, that's what Liz is saying. The buyer, she's recommending, as a buyer, you hire a professional inspector to do that inspection for you. But on our part, at least for me as a real estate agent, I'm not going there and providing you with a professional inspection to tell you about your electrical, your plumbing. No, I'm there to look at the home, generally speaking, to tell you what's going to fly as far as a buyer's concerned. Or if you don't have the budget or you just don't have the time, you don't want to deal with it. And you say, okay, so I'm going to make a note of all these discrepancies. And I'm going to say, Mr. Seller, disclose everything. That way, before the buyer even walks through your front door, they already know what they're getting into. And they walked in with eyes wide open, a list in their hand. They still want to see it. They still want to buy it. That's great after you look. But we're going to disclose, hey, buyer, you're going to take care of this. Whether or not you get an inspection done, it's your prerogative as a buyer, but this is how the seller is selling it as is. And that's all part of negotiating, because I have a bunch of buyers right now that bought the property. It's not in great condition, but they bought it as is for one reason or another. And that's on the negotiating side, right?
Very
Yep.
interesting. But Liz, to wrap up with you, what are the most common questions that buyers and sellers tend to put forth, like when it comes to the inspection phase? Because I just think, and again, we started this conversation, using a military metaphor, and I think when people think inspection, they think it's like a pass fail type of like exam, when you're really just doing like a quality assessment.
Right. I think many sellers are, they're open. They want to hear what we have to say and what may be needed to get their house sold at the best price possible. Now, Gina and I, we don't pull facts and figures out of the air. We go through the multiple listing to put apples and apples, oranges and orange, and we match them. So if you had a house in a particular neighborhood, we want to make sure the pricing that we place it at will meet the appraisal. So many of them want to know, of course, everyone wants the highest price possible, but where the reality is the market dictates what you could get for your property. So we will, we're honest. We tell them, hey, this is what's going to happen. Now, if you do a fresh coat of paint and the house is in a location that is, we always talk about location. And if it's in a position that we know you could probably get a little more because of the location, and then of course we will do the comparison and then price it based on what the current market is at. But most sellers are pretty open. They want to hear what we have to say to help them. And by the way, I want to point out, Gina and I are getting many feedback from the people that we meet on the street that they feel like the information that we have been providing has been they're learning a lot and is very they're learning a lot. So yeah, the show is really making a difference for people. So if they have any concerns or any items that they want us to cover on the show, please let us know, because it is valuable information, and Gina and I are just happy to share what we know to help our community.
Why don't we do that next week? We'll do like a grab bag. Like I'll go through my my emails and my DMs too, and say like, if, because I know people ask specific things, and they say, you know, can you guys address A, B, C, D? And we'll just
Well,
say,
we
hey,
can-
this,
We want to finish the series that we're
yeah,
doing right
absolutely.
now. And then we could do that probably.
Yeah, that's right.
after.
We got to finish getting the house first.
Exactly.
Okay,
Getting
so,
it ready for sale.
all right. Okay, so Gina, give us a tease on what's coming up next week. So now that we've completed the inspection phase.
So next week, let's talk about how to, you know, strategize on the right price.
Ooh,
Right?
price
It's all
points.
about pricing. Yeah.
Yeah. Entire dissertations have been written about pricing strategy and everything like that. We're not going to get that academic. Pricing strategy is at its core very simple. And then Liz and Gina and I are going to break that down for you. So that's next week right here on House to Home. Bye, ladies.
That's next week. Thank you.
House to Home, presented by RE/MAX Diamond Realty.